Hello, I'm Jonathan Pilkington, and I'm joined by Honey Shaw, who is I actually meant to ask you, are you a lawyer or are you an attorney? Or both?
Either one.
Okay,
Interchange. Personal injury attorney, personal injury lawyer.
okay. So they're truly just interchangeable.
Mhm.
That's that's how clueless I am about the law. So, so this is going on my YouTube channel, which I hope people will subscribe to. And I also have a podcast called Just Beautiful Experiences that I need to put this on as well. So we're going to talk about travel and the law and what to do when certain situations might come up. So, Honey, can you tell us a little about yourself first?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me join. I'm very excited to share, some resources and points of concern when traveling. I have about 4 years of experience in domestic personal injury law, specifically in the state of Georgia. Um, I work for the Dewaskin Law Firm currently, located out of Decatur. I am a Georgia licensed attorney, with most of my practice being centered on plaintiff's personal injury, as well as criminal defense.
Okay, great. Um, so if I was thinking one thing that I was thinking about is we buy travel insurance to protect us, or some people do, which I think in the travel industry we think it's a good idea. People resist it, including me sometimes. I understand that. So if we're traveling, I appreciate that you have done some research to find out some things. So if we're going on a flight and something happens, what kind of protection do we have, or what does the law say?
Well, to address first your point about travelers insurance, it for a while was sort of just a gimmick. You could insure your luggage if it was lost. You could insure, some extent of recovery if your flight was canceled for some sort of reason. And a lot of folks sort of didn't think that was important enough. But as in my role as a personal injury attorney, I do believe that contacting your personal lines insurance agent about a traveler's policy is always the best practice. Maybe not buying a traveler's policy from your hotel or your air carrier, but contacting, your representative to say, hey, what sort of coverage can I'm planning this trip. I'm going, even to Canada or, London or, not even necessarily, developing country where travelers insurance is seen much more as a necessity. You want to insure yourself against car accidents, boating accidents if you're going somewhere and planning doing some sort of, water activity. But on top of just contacting your personal line insurance on a traveler's insurance policy, it's always good practice to check and see your health insurance coverage and what that would cover in the event of you being injured, either out of state or abroad. Does my coverage include transportation back to the States should I need it? Will I be covered if I seek treatment at a foreign hospital? And in a lot of those situations, you do have coverage, but you will have to pay out of pocket while you are abroad, and then your insurance domestically will then reimburse you. So documentation is very important.
Okay.
To address the airline concern, there are a lot of things that can go wrong on an airplane. And see them put out, on the news where there are people, either verbally attacking, physically attacking other passengers. That's why air marshals are always on board. So you have to worry about, the criminal intent of others. If you're flying domestically, you are, physically assaulted or verbally assaulted by, another passenger, you have the opportunity of recovery both in, a criminal law a court of criminal law, as well as a court of civil law. So to back up a little bit, let's talk about how this sort of works. For a long time, and we'll probably, I'd imagine, get to cruise ships, but for a long time, there has been this question of, if you're in the air, who is in charge of handling, this claim?
Right.
For a while, air carriers were able to wiggle out of liability. If we go all the way back to 1963, there was an international convention referred to as the Tokyo Convention, which set a lot of the governing rules for international air carriers. That convention allowed those air carriers to escape that jurisdiction because there was no way for them to determine, if you were flying internationally, who was in charge of trying whatever case or governing, whatever unfolded in the air. Come to 1999, the Montreal Convention is introduced, and that introduced a new jurisdictional requirement where and let me refer to my notes just so I don't misspeak, but that the Montreal Convention made it that air carriers were strictly liable, which in a legal term means even if there's no criminal intent or fault of an air carrier, they're still legally responsible for proven damages of up to 128,821 special drawing rights, which is a currency, measurement established by the IMF, but it's about 175,000 US. So if you incur 175,000 proven damages US dollars, the airline is strictly liable to you for that amount. If the amount is over that, then they have a potential defense as to, well, that wasn't our fault, we weren't negligent, or it was entirely the fault of a third party. On top of that, it closed that loophole for the jurisdictional requirement. So if you were injured and the foreign entity airline said, well, we were in the United States or we were in international waters, it's unclear who is the governing body here. The Montreal Convention came in and said you can sue foreign carriers where they maintain their principal residence of business. It also required all air carriers to maintain a liability insurance. So there's a ton more coverage when you are flying. Domestically, it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. If you're pursuing some sort of civil claim against another passenger for their negligent act or their criminal act, it is likely in their state of residence. If, like I just said, if it's something internationally, if it's due to the negligence of an air carrier, then it would be in their principal place of business residence.
Okay. Wow. So I think you mentioned something about verbal assault.
Mm-hmm.
So what would that look like?
We're seeing a lot of, this requires a distinction between, assault and battery. So a common misconception is if you are, physically harmed, you say, I was assaulted. In a legal term of art, assault really just means that somebody placed you in harm's way, that you were in fear of some sort of imminent danger or, physical harm. Battery is when you actually make physical contact with another individual. So now we're seeing it a lot of the time now in these viral videos from airlines that, a lot of racism or, dissatisfaction with masking requirements in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And those sorts of, even verbal and tense altercations that maybe don't rise to that physical battery can still be considered, criminally assault. So again, domestically, if you were, wanted to take out a for criminal assault against a passenger. If they were, U.S. resident, then you would do it in their state of residence. And then if they were a foreign national, you would likely have to do it in their country of residence, because there is a law that exists here in the States called forum nonconvenience. So you can attempt, and often I would suggest, you call a criminal, well, if you're seeking criminal liability, then obviously you would notify the air marshals, as well as the FAA, and lodge a complaint and see if they will pursue criminal action within the United States. But that's not your only form of recovery. Even if there is not a criminal case, you can pursue a civil case for emotional distress, medical damages, for anything of that sort. And you can likely do it in the United States, but as I said, those foreign residents or entities, what have you, have the option to lodge the defense of forum nonconvenience, which means it's far too inconvenient for them to come and try a case or defend a case in the United States. And then at that point, you would have to contact an attorney in the defendant's country of residence to see what you can pursue.
Wow, okay. So the Great American Road Trip has been a really hot topic these days because people feel that that's safer than flying somewhere, or they don't want to risk getting caught in another country and not being able to come home. So if I rent a car, or if I just drive my own car or rent an RV and get injured or have a car accident, what happens then?
So let's say you are, driving your own car and headed up to New York from Atlanta, Georgia. If you were injured in North Carolina by a North Carolina resident, you would, want to immediately, it would unfold like any other personal injury claim would unfold, is you would want to contact the police in the state that you were present in, and then seek medical attention as quickly as possible. If you need to take an ambulance and go to a North Carolina hospital, then you take the ambulance and go to the North Carolina hospital. In my practice, most of our out-of-state resident clients did end up seeking or having to seek medical treatment while in the state of Georgia, even though that was not the destination of their trip, be that personal or for business. One big thing that insurance carriers look to is, was there a gap in treatment? If they were really hurt, why did it take them, a week, 2 weeks, a month to go to the orthopedist or the physical therapist, what have you? Some of my clients, were on their way to a sunny vacation in Florida and got in a horrific, car collision. I have one who had to divert her whole vacation to her parents' home in Augusta to seek medical treatment there. So that is one of the biggest things that I would caution, folks traveling is, if you need to get medical treatment, get it as quickly as possible. You want to document everything to the best of your ability. That means taking photos of your vehicle, photos of the other vehicle, and photos of your injury. You want to make sure that you are documenting the hospital or urgent care clinic, to right down to the treating physician and the address of the establishment, because these are things that you are likely not familiar with if you're in a place, but are very, very important to the building out of your personal injury case. At that point, hopefully you can make it to your destination or get back to a place where you can recover. And then you would want to contact a personal injury attorney within the state that you were injured. So if you were injured, as our example was going in North Carolina, someone like myself who is barred in Georgia would likely not be able to help you. Now I could, and we could get into the whole legal nonsense of how I can, be a guest attorney in different states if another attorney will sponsor me. But the best practice is to hire somebody who does that all day, every day. You want an attorney to know the area that you were in. You want the attorney to know the defense firms that would potentially be defending the other driver who hurt you in that collision. Now, moving on to things such as RV trips and how that has been insanely popular during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's rent the camper, let's rent the RV. Those are things that you want to really scrutinize the insurance policy, the renter's insurance policy. How protected are you in the event that you cause a collision? How protected are you if somebody else wrecks into the RV? Are you liable for the damage to the RV? Are you liable to the damage to the other vehicle? So on and so forth. So the best advice I can give there is, make sure you have read that renter's agreement and you are aware of your liability and the liability that they would provide in the event that you were injured due to the negligence of another. In the most cases, if somebody else hits you, they're likely going to be liable. The other thing that I want to mention to close us out is it's always a great time to check your auto insurance policy for med pay coverage. A lot of folks don't know whether or not they have it. And that is a great and necessary thing to have, I would say, because if you are injured, out of state and you are unaware of whether your health insurance will cover your medical expenses, you could have that coverage through your auto insurance. So it's a phenomenal, component to have in your insurance policy. I would recommend everybody check and see if they have it, and if not, get the med pay coverage.
Okay, yeah, I need to check into that for sure. Okay, so cruises are coming back one way or another. I'm scheduled on one for August 15th out of Dominican Republic, which I'm super excited about. So just like an airplane, all sorts of things can happen on a cruise ship. You can trip and fall, you can fall overboard. You're probably not going to survive that, but so what kind of protection do we have, or what do we do?
So I wish I could launch into a huge spiel like I did for, airline carriers in saying that there are, a lot of international conventions that are being rewritten and are being, maintained. But there's a reason why there's so many murder mysteries set on cruise ships, is because jurisdiction is much more difficult in maritime law. If you were to be injured on a cruise ship because of the negligence of the cruise ship itself, or due to, the criminal or negligent intent of another passenger, it's a lot more shady as to how you were able to recover. And it's not as simple as just contacting an international personal injury attorney. This is going to require an attorney focused on maritime law, because that jurisdictional requirement is much more difficult to establish than it is in the airline industry now. What I want to take this opportunity to, caution everybody of is cruise lines have so many more liability waivers than aircraft travel as well, because it's essentially a floating resort. You have a ton of different activities that you can get injured on. I mean, it's almost as if on some that you're going to a amusement park in some circumstances, which, if we were talking about, and we can cover this if you'd like, if you're stopping at the roadside attraction, on your little road trip, when you buy that ticket, you're agreeing to waive liability because you're assuming certain risks associated with those sort of thrill-seeking activities. And so we see that a lot with cruise ships, where now they have the giant water slides or the, the ways that you can do the surfing, the artificial surfing on board, not to mention, just the pools, the hot tubs, the spas, the areas that you can slip and fall. And there are a ton of liability waivers, built into the purchase of those cruise ship tickets. And it very much depends on the company. That is another thing where I'm going to refer you back and say, call your personal lines insurance agent and make sure that you have coverage for those sorts of things in the event that you have waived liability and you do not have recovery from the cruise ship company. So that is something that you should be wary of whenever you are doing any sort of thrill-seeking activity. Check and see what am I signing? Read what you are signing, and oftentimes on cruise ships that is built into the purchase of your ticket.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we don't read when we buy those. And also, I think this is another example of when travel insurance can really be beneficial.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, travel advisors know this, and travelers themselves probably do too, but most cruise lines I'm not clear about it myself, but they have their flag in another country. So US laws don't necessarily apply to them.
Right. And, that is something that is, worth stating is I say that it is more difficult, to nail down jurisdiction, especially when traveling international water. But you should always explore, whether or not you would have a claim in that company's, wherever the ship is registered, sort of home residence. If it's a huge, cruise line like Carnival or Disney, you have potentially a channel for recovery against the business that is principally operated. It's an American business. When you get into different cruise lines from different countries, you do have a possibility for recovery in their principal places of business, but they do have more defenses as to the jurisdiction, which can knock a lawsuit out before it even sees a courtroom.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So whether I'm on a cruise or a road trip or an airplane, if I'm the victim of a crime, in any of these scenarios, what do I do?
Right. That is always a possibility. Right now, we have, spoken a lot about accidents, common negligence, you slip and fall, you get in a car accident, these are all common situations. But unfortunately, we all are familiar with, horrible things that can happen at home and abroad. You can be the victim of a sexual assault. You can be the victim of a robbery. I mean, there are several high profile cases that we've seen that, Kim Kardashian, the very unfortunate high profile cases of when we see, murders occur abroad or kidnappings, disappearances. Do the families of those victims, have any sort of channels for recovery? And, the very unfortunate answer is it depends. All depends. And this is another time that we're going to harp on travel insurance, because you can, buy, again, make sure that you have that coverage, if you are injured in any sort of, crime, to ensure that you have medical coverage, to ensure that you have, some sort of, contingency if that happens. But the first and foremost thing, let's do domestic. So domestic is going to play out almost exactly as I said, the personal injury. You need to contact the authorities as quickly as possible in the state that you are in. If you are international, you want to contact the embassy, the US embassy, as quickly as possible. Now, while I say that it is always a good idea to enroll into the State Department STEP program. So that is the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. It is, a way that if the worst does happen, the embassy knows where you are. They have an emergency contact for you, and they will be able to assist you in either getting back to the United States or getting in touch with your family or finding an accredited hospital. On that note, the Joint Commission international website has a list of accredited hospitals in a lot of countries. So that's also a very good resource to have when traveling internationally. Another thing is you're going to want to be aware of the crime trends of the country that you're visiting. So the Bureau of Consular Affairs is the agency that does assign those different levels of danger when you're looking at where to vacation next. So you want to be careful as well. You don't want to put yourself in any situations of which you could be a victim of a crime. This is going to be a super preventative sort of portion of my talk, because you want to avoid those situations as much as possible. So, don't travel alone at night. Don't take your most expensive jewelry or, designer handbag if you are going somewhere where to be a more popular area for funding crime. Again, it is difficult to establish jurisdiction. It is difficult to sue a foreign national in a United States court, but it's not impossible. And you should always contact, an attorney as quickly as possible after something has been done to you. But before that, contact the authorities and contact the embassy, depending on where you are.
Okay. So I've seen the STEP thing. That's a pretty simple form on a website, right?
Yep. It is very straightforward, and it's almost, I compare it almost to like a permission slip from the United States when you are, leaving, that the school or, our government will have, your mom, your spouse, your, next of friend, whomever, your emergency contact information, and, that they will be able to provide all of that to specific agencies that will assist you in getting home if that's what you need. If especially if you do need to be, medevaced home, if you are not, in a spot where you can reach an accredited hospital. But that's also something that your traveler's insurance can swoop in and be very helpful with. For example, there was a woman who was injured in a dune buggy in the United Arab Emirates, where she was able to get a private jet through her private traveler's insurance to get transported back home. And then in that situation, not only did she have recovery claims, in the UAE, but also against the manufacturer of that sand dune buggy, which ended up being, an American manufacturer. So I've been talking about it sort of either or, but you can have those concurrent claims where you are pursuing recovery both in the country that you were injured, as well as, a manufacturer or air carrier or cruise line based out of the States.
Okay. I skipped the question about being injured abroad, but did you already sort of cover that, or is there more to say?
It is, like I said, it all depends, which is the attorney-like answer I can give. But it is always a good idea to try and speak to a personal injury attorney within the country that you were injured in, and for the same reasons as to why you would want to do that. Like I said, if you were injured in North Carolina, because they are familiar with the legal system and the laws there. You want evaluation of your claim by somebody who's familiar with the jurisdiction and the statutes, in place. Not to say that you shouldn't also contact, an attorney in the States, because as I said, there are multiple channels for recovery here. So while maybe an attorney in the UAE might not be able to help you pursue the claim against the American company, an American attorney could.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so I can imagine there would be times when you might accidentally commit a crime in another country where you just didn't know it was a crime.
Right.
Or maybe you're just a criminal and commit one. So what happens then?
That is something where you need to do your own research. You should always be you should familiarize yourself with the laws of, the country that you are traveling to. It's another thing where the State Department does have a lot of helpful resources. It is, if you do, and that's where the STEP program would be a really good move. What if you are unlawfully detained? What if you are accused of committing a crime that you in fact did not commit? That can be very scary, being arrested in a country where maybe you don't speak the language, you're unfamiliar with its legal system. If the State Department has you registered in that program, it's going to be a lot easier for them to determine if you have gone missing. If you do inadvertently commit a crime, again, it's going to be so much easier if you're enrolled in STEP, because they will be able to notify your emergency contact and then provide them the information that you would need in order to defend yourself against whatever crime that you are accused of committing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And these things happen. I was just reading, I think it was over the weekend, this guy went to Mexico, and as he went through customs, they found ammunition in his bag, which he just, for whatever reason, forgot was in there because he's a gun owner at home. He didn't have a gun. Mm-hmm. He just had bullets. And I'm not sure the end of the story of it. He was in jail for a few days or something.
Yeah, I mean, and that can happen, for something as simple as, maybe you didn't know that you were not permitted to bring back some sort of flora or fauna. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even have to be in the realm of, a firearm or ammunition. There are very specific restrictions in some countries of what you can and can't take with you. It's not even a question of reporting to customs. It's just you're not allowed to, I think some specific examples come to mind, like there are several protected, beaches in Hawaii that you're not allowed to remove sand. And obviously, petrified wood is highly protected. So there are, obviously those things exist in foreign countries as well. And that is something where you need to be aware, because if not, that's a very high risk that you incur. That's also the benefit of working with a travel advisor like yourself, because you can often shed some light as to, what are some things to look out for, and some things that may potentially make you criminally liable.
Yeah.
But the best advice I can give there is, try and familiarize yourself with the laws of the country that you were traveling with, just if it's even at a base level. And that the State Department can be super, super helpful. And I highly recommend checking out some of the resources that I'm going to share with you.
Okay, yeah, good. So there will be some links in the notes of the video. Okay, so there are two big points I want to make. So you're a personal injury attorney and I am a travel advisor. And both, just like chiropractors and other industries, there are some people that give our industry a bad name. Mm-hmm. But we are people who are trying to do it right and provide information and do the best for our clients. So I think that's important to say.
Right.
Don't fear the personal injury attorney. They're trying to help you. It's a good one.
Most of us. There are most
Yeah,
of us.
yeah. So I was noticing a few themes. Um, I think like do your homework, whether it's checking on the place you're going or checking with your insurance company. Um, Probably other things. Read the fine print. If
Read the fine print.
um, you might want to buy travel insurance if you don't have the coverage you need. Um, be smart.
Travel
um,
smart. Travel safe.
yeah, I remember I think it's my Colombian friend said that there's a saying there, something like, don't don't flaunt your mangoes or something. It so it's meaning like don't they may be very wealthy people, but they don't wear flashy jewelry when you're in a situation where it could be snatched from you.
Right.
Yeah. Um, or wear a mask when you're traveling during the coronavirus pandemic.
Be aware that, when you are, a lot of, and obviously as we are all ramping back up to travel again, we all maybe like to have a glass of wine or two in the airport lounge or bar. But just know that you are always being watched. You are being evaluated as a risk from the second that you board, both by the flight attendants and the onboard marshal.
Oh yeah.
If you are coming on, headed to a bachelor party and you're being rowdy, you are considered a risk, and you will likely, be a name that is given to the pilot
Wow.
before takeoff. And the pilot is who decides, whether or not you are a flight risk or whether or not you need to be detained, in flight. Um, so you are being evaluated as a risk just as much as everyone else. So, I say that because there are, so many instances of racial discrimination, on flights between passengers, but, you are being scrutinized no matter age, gender, race, by the flight attendants and the marshal. So if you're trying to scrutinize another passenger, just know that somebody else is definitely doing that to you as well.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it's true at resorts and hotels. And I've seen it because someone pointed out, oh, that person that just looks like a regular employee is actually a security guard and they're watching these rowdy people.
Yep. So, just as much as you need to be worried about, folks with criminal intent, you also should be aware that if you are seeking to maybe skirt the law, if maybe doing some form of substance abuse, or if you have had too much to drink, or if you try to pick up that sconce that you really enjoyed from the resort and take it home, that there may be some eyes on you as well.
Right. Um, Good. So any closing remarks, attorney?
The one thing I did forget to say is in all our discussions of insurance, Medicare and Medicaid do not provide any sort of coverage abroad. So that is
Oh,
blanket that I think is important to mention. But exactly what you said, the highlights: travel safe, travel smart, read the fine print, look into all of your insurance policies, and make sure that you are the most covered that you can be. And, to close it out, work with someone, like Jonathan, who will put you in safe and fun environments. A lot of situations, bad situations that people get themselves into is that mindset that nothing can hurt me, and unfortunately there are many things that can.
true. Yeah. And if something does happen, I have Honey Shaw on my side, and I can help. Um, okay, good. Thank you. This has been great and enlightening.
You.
Yeah. So we will be in touch, and we'll. Oh, So one last question. I when this started as just a regular podcast, I would always say it's kind of either or. Either describe a beautiful experience or where are you dreaming of going right now?
Ooh, that one's hard. Especially hard after I've done all this research about getting and the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
I think that I am really looking forward to traveling with my mother. The first opportunity that I get, she is a anti cold weather, person. So I am taking, this opportunity to explore every beautiful Caribbean, island sort of adventure. And definitely be using you to help us. But right now it is beach dreaming, to just have a fun and relaxing getaway with my mom.
Yeah. Okay, can't wait. I have ideas. Okay, well, thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you.